Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
But they picked the wrong victim in this case.
Attorneys say new evidence contradicts a Border Patrol agent's claims in the shooting of a Chicago woman.
DHS cannot be reformed. It must be dismantled and something new must take its place.
Congress members at odds over how to reform the Department of Homeland Security as a funding deadline looms. And the 100th anniversary of Black History Month. A look at its Chicago roots as well as the past, present, and future of teaching Black history. First off tonight, new evidence is being released today in the shooting of a Chicago woman, Marimar Martinez. She was shot 5 times by a Border Patrol agent in Brighton Park back in October after agents said she, quote, ambushed them and rammed them with her car. Martinez was charged with assaulting the agents, but those charges were dropped. And she's now pursuing legal action of her own. Here's one of her attorneys earlier today.
I think ICE was hoping that they would get some radical individual so that they could, support some of their false claims, but they picked the wrong victim in this case to mess with.
Our Matt Masterson joins us now with more. Matt, remind us about the federal claims that agents and the Department of Homeland Security were leveling against her.
Yeah, basically from the start, Homeland Security has labeled Martinez, a 30-year-old Montessori school teacher, as a domestic terrorist who ambushed these agents in Brighton Park. She rammed them with her vehicle after she was pursuing them for 15 minutes. The agents themselves say that they were boxed in by Martinez and other agents. They used that as a justification for the shooting when the agents got out and did fire these shots at her. This all despite the fact that federal prosecutors who did charge her with assaulting these agents dropped these charges with prejudice just weeks later, meaning these charges can never be refiled in federal court.
So like we said, those charges, as you just said, they were dropped. Marimar Martinez is pushing to get the evidence in her case released. What did we learn today from that evidence?
Yeah, so today we saw some body camera footage from inside the vehicle that the agents were driving in. That showed that the agents did not appear to be rammed by Martinez. Instead, the driver of that vehicle appeared to swerve to his left into the path of Martinez. The agent who fired the shots, Charles Exum, also claimed that he had fired all 5 shots through the windshield of Martinez's car, claiming that she was driving straight at him. Some of the evidence released today, though, showed that it appeared that a bullet was fired through a passenger window and that another bullet came from the rear of his passenger seat into the front, coming from the back of the vehicle, which contradicted his claims as well. And surveillance footage from nearby businesses appeared to show that the agents were not boxed in, that they claimed that there were these vehicles in front of them preventing them from moving further, which is why they got out and started firing. But the surveillance footage showed that there were no vehicles in front of them, and that they were able to drive forward if they needed to.
Some text messages were also released today. What did we learn there?
Yeah, these texts were sent to or from Agent Exum, who fired the shots, and they appeared to show broad support from his fellow agents for the shooting. One agent texted him, calling him a legend among his fellow colleagues and saying that beers would be on him next time he saw him. He also got wide support from his superiors. Border Patrol Chief Greg Bavino basically offered him a promotion within hours of this, saying he wanted to extend him past his retirement date. He said in another text that he had received support from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and made a possible reference to Donald Trump supporting him as well in this. There was previous text that came out as well from Exum in which he also bragged about the shooting. He said that he had fired 5 shots but caused 7 wounds to Martinez, he was a firearms instructor and basically bragging about his accuracy with this.
Matt, what's next in this case?
So today Martinez's attorneys filed a federal tort claim. This is basically the first step in filing a federal suit claiming personal injury from a federal agent, but they need to wait several months before they're able to get a response from DHS and move forward with a civil suit, which is what they intend to do. They want to file that later this year, and they said they plan to go to force a trial in that case as early as October later this year.
Okay, more to come on this case, of course. Matt Masterson, thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandis.
And you can read Matt's full story on our website. It's all at WTTW.com/news.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Tense exchanges today on Capitol Hill as Attorney General Pam Bondi faced heat from lawmakers over the Epstein files and more.
I'm glad you finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda. Democrats must impeach and remove lawless officials like you and Kristi Noem.
Yeah, now this comes as lawmakers continue to negotiate funding for the Department of Homeland Security, which Democrats are holding up over proposed reforms to immigration enforcement efforts. Joining us now on Zoom from Capitol Hill is Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, who is not seeking re-election. We were hoped to be joined by Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, who is not facing an opponent in next month's primary election. But I think there's a vote going on right now, and I think that's where she is. We hope she joins us. We should mention we also invited Republican Congressman Mike Bost and Darren LaHood, but have not heard back. Congressman Garcia, thank you for fitting us in. I know there's a lot going on right now.
Good evening. Glad to join you, Brandis.
So you sit on the House Judiciary Committee. This is, of course, where we heard Attorney General Pam Bondi testifying today and sparring with Congresspeople. What's your reaction to her performance today?
Even though she had acted this way in the Senate, I thought she might change her approach in the House of Representatives. I can't believe that an Attorney General would conduct herself in the disrespectful, evasive, lack of empathy for Epstein sexual assault survivors that were in the audience, and essentially coming to debate instead of to answer questions and engage in serious debate. A total disrespect for the institution and for the process of the Congress doing its oversight responsibility.
So yesterday, congressional leaders said that a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security is possible. This is before a potential partial shutdown could happen this weekend if a funding measure is not passed in time. Would you say that you all are still far apart and that that partial shutdown is likely?
As of this moment, we're far apart. The offer that Democrats made to the White House, the response from the White House was vague, inadequate, and unserious in terms of specifics. Our priorities are to end warrantless enforcement, the raids that have been going on, violating people's rights in mass. We're asking for respect for sensitive locations like school and clinics and houses of worship, places where the community should be able to gather peacefully without any interruption. And of course, ending the racial profiling that has been a prime feature of the violence that we've seen wherever ICE and Customs and Border Protection appear in our country and disrupt cities and disrupt the life and terrorize communities with their mass thugs as they do this aggressive, unlawful enforcement.
So what agencies would be impacted, Congressman, if a partial shutdown should happen?
In addition to the Department of Homeland Security, ICE and Customs and Border Protection, TSA at airports would be affected, as would the Federal Emergency Management Agency. There is no reason for a shutdown to occur. Republicans are insisting because they refuse to relent on abiding by the by the Constitution, and of course the rule of law, and of course ending the reign of terror that we've seen everywhere where ICE presents itself in cities across America.
So you've named a few of the demands that Democrats would like to see. Judicial warrants, or the use of judicial warrants versus administrative warrants for entering homes and other places. Better identification of DHS officers or ICE and immigration officers, like not wearing masks or wearing name tags, something identifiable. You're asking for new use of force standards and to stop racial profiling. Now, yesterday, your colleague, Representative Ramirez, on the House Homeland Security Committee, they heard from 3 leaders of customs and immigration agencies within DHS. And some of what we've heard from DHS is that unmasking or being able to identify those agents in the field could possibly lead to their doxing, their information being posted online or out in public. Why shouldn't the agency, though, protect them from that kind of harassment or potential harassment?
Agents are protected just like police officers and sheriffs and other law enforcement are protected across the country. There is no difference in seeking people that they want to detain, apprehend, or place under deportation proceedings. If police officers in communities in Chicago or anywhere else don't wear masks, if state police don't wear masks, why should ICE and CBP agents wear masks? Even our military doesn't wear masks, only in the most extraordinary circumstances.
Okay. Again, your colleague, Representative Ramirez, we heard in a soundbite earlier, she's calling for the abolishment of ICE. She has introduced what she's calling the Melt ICE Act. But you feel differently. Do you think that the agency, or you don't think that the agency should be dismantled entirely? What are the reforms that you'd like to see? How do you think it can be saved?
Oh, no. On the contrary, the Department of Homeland Security was created almost 25 years ago. They've trampled on the Constitution. They've done a disservice to our country. They're terrorizing communities. It is impossible for this agency as we know it to have any type of standing or trust in many communities across the country. That's why public opinion has turned against them, especially over the past several months. The enforcement that they have done is indefensible, and they've murdered people. You cannot rehabilitate an agency like that. I believe that it needs to be dismantled. It needs to be restructured, and that essentially calls for also a separation of agencies like TSA and the Federal Emergency Management Agency to be placed elsewhere, not within this department. It's gone rogue and it's turned against the people, and now it's acting as mass thugs for Donald Trump.
All right. Thank you for the clarity on that. So a YouGov report survey shows that 46% of people polled support abolishing ICE, while 41% oppose, 12% are unsure. Additionally, a think tank called Third Way says that that kind of language hurts your argument with Republicans. Is it not, Congressman, an extreme position, kind of like the defund the police rhetoric we heard back in 2020? Does that make it difficult to actually achieve reform?
I think we can get into a debate around semantics and different descriptions of what needs to happen. What I think does need to happen is we need to reestablish a solid foundation on the rule of law and rebuild departments that are going to comply with the law and where there will be accountability. These agencies have gone totally rogue, have violated the Constitution, and have even produced the shootings of over 12 people, some of them fatally, as we've seen more recently. But above all, we've never seen an agency act the way that they have acted over the past several months.
All right, that's where we'll have to leave it. I know there's a lot going on in your office tonight and the rest of this week. Thank you, Congressman Chuy Garcia, for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, 100 years of celebrating and teaching Black history.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices.
A century ago, Negro History Week was established to commemorate the contributions Black people made to American society. It has since expanded into what we now know as Black History Month. But on this 100th anniversary, federal efforts to diminish Black history include dismantling a slavery exhibit in Philadelphia, removing portions of the Home Monument in Mississippi for civil rights icon Medgar Evers, and taking down a 19th century photo of a formerly enslaved man scarred by whippings from his enslaver. Joining us to discuss all of that and more are Robert Hansard, an associate professor of African American Studies and historian at Columbia College Chicago, Krishan David, an AP African American Studies teacher at Gwendolyn Brooks High School in Roseland, and on Zoom, Sherman Dilla Thomas, the brand ambassador and social media chief at the DuSable Black History Museum and Education Center. Thanks to you all. Happy Black History Month. Glad you're here. Professor, I want to start with you. Remind us how Black History Month, at the time Black History Week, how it started, or Negro History Week, how it started 100 years ago.
It's the birth child, I think, of Carter G. Woodson. It's his effort to celebrate and draw attention to the value of African American and African contributions to the broader history. He uses Du Bois's sort of idea of contributing to the great sort of cultural narrative of our experience. I think that's critically important. Just a moment to reflect, just for Black people, but also for the wider globe, for the wider nation.
How's observance of Black History Month changed over the years?
For me, as someone who teaches at Columbia College and works with creative students, I think it's just more and more an emphasis on drawing on the local expertise of some of the experiences of local folks. I talk about Lorenzo Dow Turner and the Gullah language and that connection to Africa. I talk about Prexy Nesbitt and all the work that he did in terms of bringing attention to the anti-apartheid movement. So for me, it's about localizing it. DuSable, really getting into his story, letting people understand his African origins through Haiti, developing those kinds of conversations. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Krishan, this is your 4th year teaching African American Studies and at a predominantly Black high school. What does it mean for students to have that kind of access to their own history, and especially at the AP level, the advanced placement level?
I can only tell you that I've seen magical things happening with students. They feel empowered, they have new established voices, they feel like their presence is wanted and needed. And I think that just the understanding of history has now given them more purpose in how they're going to move into their future.
So, I mean, obviously, the Black students are getting this access to, because it is a predominantly Black school, not all Black, of course. What do we know about the kind of Black history learning and lessons that students throughout Chicago and Chicago public schools are getting?
Well, I think that at my school, it's predominantly Black, but I actually work with multiple teachers who teach this course in Chicago public schools, and the demographics are very different. They offer the course at Walter Payton, they offer the course at Kenwood, they offer the course at Westinghouse. So there are a multitude of demographic populations that have access to this course. And I think that one thing that we know is that Black history cannot be a course for only Black students. And so all are welcome to engage in this rich and rigorous American history, right?
Absolutely, thank you. So Dilla, welcome back. You often tell us that everything dope comes from Chicago. Tell us about Chicago's place in shaping Black American identity.
Oh man, and hey Brand, it's good to see you again. And yes, everything dope about America, including Black history, comes from Chicago. As the good professor stated, this is what we now today call ASALH, which is responsible for Negro Achievement Week. They started off as the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. They come from Chicago. But most of our great minds, and I shouldn't say most, but a lot of them spent time learning here in Chicago. Dr. Benjamin Mays, who goes on to be the longest serving president at Morehouse, he was educated here in Chicago. Carter G. Woodson, educated here in Chicago. And then so many others taught here in Chicago. John Hope Franklin. And then I would say one of the most important books to African American history is Before the Mayflower by Lerone Bennett Jr. And he had offices right here in the Johnson & Johnson building, right there on Michigan Avenue.
Professor, of course, Black history or Black culture predates, we know about the Great Migration. Of course, we know about chattel slavery. You've mentioned a little bit of, Chicago's connections to Africa. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Looking at the history of DuSable, looking at his origin, starting with the groups of folks who come from Haiti and come into Illinois country up through Louisiana territory. I've done a lot of research on some of those very ships where folks have arrived and come, and a number of those ships come from places, the Bakongo in West Central Africa, some of the Yoruba states, the Akan region. So it's important to draw on those sort of culture and history. I think too often we look at slavery and captivity as the origin point to start to investigate African American history and culture, but we need to start at Africa. We need to start with these early sorts of experiences, these early cultures. I call it kind of a look at cosmology, because you're trying to get into the worldview and a perception and a perspective of these cultures.
All of that said, we are seeing the dismantling of all of this history for African Americans across the country, as we mentioned in the open. Professor Hansard, what's your reaction to what's happening?
Just unfortunate. I mean, I think it's an easy shot to equivocate a focus on black culture and black heritage with unpatriotism or un-Americanism. But think about something like Gordon Parks trying to go and take pictures of the Tuskegee Airmen, you know, him being prohibited to do so. At the same moment, FDR agreeing to have Executive Order 8802 to reduce, discrimination because he doesn't want A. Philip Randolph to march in Washington, right? So it's just that sort of getting a feel for this dynamic and understanding how valuable all this is to what we need to know about America. This is our story. This is an American story, so we don't want to miss it.
Right. We often hear that, you know, black history is American history and American history is black history as well. Dilla, same question to you. What is your reaction when we see instances like alterations at the home of Medgar Evers and the like?
My reaction is one of sadness, right? I think you can't fix anything that you're not willing to acknowledge. And anytime we try to erase what happened to black folks here in America, it pushes us backwards in our ability to rectify it and move forward. And it also encourages me, though. It makes me realize that my work and the work of the panel is so important. And it also makes me want to challenge all of us, because if we don't write down the history we're making today, if we don't write down the family history, if we don't try to disseminate that history, then eventually that history can be erased. And so, you know, on the one hand, I'm sad, but on the other hand, it empowers me to continue to work hard so that I can make sure that I'm preserving black history for future generations.
Krishan, how do you talk to your students about the administration's efforts to rewrite history, to change history, to erase it?
Well, I have to be honest. I have to be very careful. I mean, I am in a school, right? One thing that I do is I encourage them to use their voices and to share their insights about what is happening. And it's quite surprising to see the students are well aware of some of the injustices and inequitable practices that are happening now. Many of them are impacted by some of the current policies personally, and oftentimes those stories will come up in discussions in the class.
Okay. The founder of Black History Week, as you mentioned, Carter G. Woodson, he intended for Black history to still be a year-round pursuit, not just a week, not just a month. Professor, how can we continue that? How can we keep that up?
Just by kind of what we're doing here, a panel from diverse backgrounds coming and speaking to, you know, different elements and different approaches and different perspectives of understanding this history, and just carrying that discussion beyond February. I mean, February, you know, everyone says it's the shortest month, but the reason is because of, you know, Abraham Lincoln's birthday, but also Frederick Douglass's birthday is the reason why the month was chosen. But there's so many other contributors to the black experience that are, you know, born in other months. So, you know,
you sure?
Yes. Yes. And so it's important to get, you know, as much as we can. It's a year-long process. It's about bringing in these diverse perspectives and continuing to contribute and add and develop this conversation.
Krishan, what can we be doing the rest of the year to acknowledge our history, not just in February?
Well, I think that what educators could be doing is definitely, you know, incorporating more diverse perspectives, more of those stories that are, you know, related to people who look like their students into their curriculum. I think that we also can take opportunities to celebrate by going outside of our buildings into the communities where our students live and travel every day. I also think that we can continue to encourage, you know, ethnic studies courses that promote educating students on our rich culture and history globally.
Dilla, I'm going to give you the last word. We've got about 40 seconds left. You know, same question. How can we do this year round? But also, you know, to someone who's looking for an interesting way to mark Black History Month, what do you recommend?
Well, I'm not going to get in trouble with my boss and not say come to the DuSable Black History Museum and Education Center. We have a beautiful exhibit, Paris in Black, that teaches you about the Black experience overseas. And then real quickly, what I think we all should do is take the Spike Lee do the right thing approach. When you're approaching one that is not African American, ask them their favorite musician, favorite sports, favorite athlete, and one of those answers is going to be an African American. And you can take that point to further educate them on the impact we've had on this nation.
All right, I love that. Sparked a conversation. Professor Robert Hansard, Krishan David, excuse me, and Sherman Dilla Thomas. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
And that is our show for this Wednesday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. How a bill requiring proof of citizenship to vote could impact elections. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm, righting the heaviest wrongs for more than 40 years.